Good afternoon again, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural Women's History Month event. My name is Natalia Hilton, and I'm a Senior Director here at CyberWarrior in Operations and Strategy. Our theme today is Challenge and Opportunities, Role Models for Women in Cybersecurity. This event is important to cybersecurity because we serve an industry where only 20% of the workforce is women. Cybersecurity has the potential to be a game changer for the lives of many women. If you think about it and look at it from a financial perspective, the average pay of a cybersecurity professional at the entry-level state is about $82,000 for those ages 42. The average pay for women is $60,000 for those ages 35 to 44, according to Smart Asset. And men make about $20,000 more than women on average. Some more, some less, depending on which demographic you fall under. But imagine the possibilities of what we could achieve together by enabling to bring that gender parity down through cybersecurity. With this in mind, we have partnered with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, through our CyberWarrior Foundation to support women that are looking for an opportunity in cybersecurity. While we're in the midst of financial climate where banks are beginning to shut down, revolutions are happening all over the world, and women continue to struggle to break through the barriers imposed. Today, we at CyberWarrior, with the support of CISA, are announcing, are you ready? That we're offering 10 partial scholarships in the amount of $9,200 to cover the cost of a reduced tuition from $23K to $16K, bringing the student contribution down to about $6,800 towards a cybersecurity bootcamp with CyberWarrior. This allows them to enter the bootcamp, access our online tools, and receive some of our placement resources. And while the scholarships are exciting today, we also want to challenge you and welcome companies and educators to partner with CyberWarrior on our quest to educate and empower 20,000 women by 2028 to conquer and make an impact in the over 4 million roles available in the cybersecurity space today. 5K of those are going to be in the US and 15K will be outside of the US. So let's clap for change and progress that the cybersecurity world means for the workforce development and the education for women all around the world. Now, let's turn to our panelists so that we may begin our session. Ladies, a warm welcome on behalf of our community, and thank you for joining us today. We have with us 4 incredibly talented women that have broken the ceilings in their field, are here to share some nuggets with us about their journeys. If you could each introduce yourself and also what your superpower is. Let's start with Gina.
I knew it. I wish I could get the lottery like that too. My name is Gina Davis. I am a business solutions strategist at VMware. I've been doing technology for quite a few decades. And number one, thank you guys for inviting me to be here. My superpower would be, I guess, optimism. We talked about some things before, but I think I'm the eternal optimist that everything that you want to do, you can do, and there's opportunity for everyone. So hi.
Hi, welcome, Gina. Megan, why don't you go next?
Sure. My name is Megan Dosher. It is really an honor to be here today. I'm excited about the scholarship and hopefully bringing more women into the industry. I've been working on national level cybersecurity policy issues for about 20 years now. And I started working at CISA at the end of last year. And now I lead a team that's working for more secure, basically to enable the market for more secure software solutions. My superpower, I think, is probably tenacity. Don't give up, right? You have to keep trying. Don't let one defeat or even a couple of defeats, get you down. And don't let external negativity, keep you back. You know what you can do, right? And just keep trying, because if you give up, then you're never going to get there. And, we face a lot of obstacles in this world, but I think you all have it in you.
That's some great advice. Luz, if you could introduce yourself and share your superpower.
Thank you, Natalia. I am so honored to be part of this conversation today. My name is Luz Frazier. I am the founder and CEO of Lead Humano. Lead Humano is an organization that develops the people side of business. So I have spent the last 20 plus years in corporations, leading human resources and really specializing in developing leaders. I do not have a background in cybersecurity, but what I do bring to the conversation, like my other colleagues here as panelists, is I have a passion and a real commitment to developing women in leadership in particular. And so my superpower is to help unleash the inner potential, the capability that we all have to accomplish anything that we set out to do, and that we hold back on because of limiting beliefs. So I take it very personally to do everything I can to help people succeed in whatever they're trying to accomplish.
Wonderful. And finally, Sonia, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and share what your superpower is with the group.
Hi, Sonia Rista. Thank you so much for having me today. My superpower, I think, is networking. So through networking, I've come across Rainier in this organization, certainly, but also helping others connect to certain industries or maybe certain companies that they want to work for or they have a personal interest in, so that their career objectives sort of align with what they're naturally inclined to. So I've helped a couple of contacts get positions at hospitals and other healthcare organizations. I have a strong network in healthcare, and I think that that's my superpower and my contribution to the community.
Wow, all wonderful things and all great tools already as we kick off just with introductions. And with that, if all of you could actually share about your experience, how you landed in the cybersecurity industry. And for you, Luz, if you could focus a little bit more on your HR background and what you saw there. So let's start. Sonia, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
Yeah, so my background is business consulting. So I have a business undergraduate, not a computer science undergraduate. And I think that that's helped with the communications that I conduct with boards and executive suites iteratively over the last 15 years of my career. My path to cybersecurity came through program management. I was a program manager at Tufts Medical Center as part of Dell Services. And started to observe and ask questions about information security practices and HIPAA-related practices specifically because it was a healthcare entity. I asked so many questions that the CIO asked me to do a special project by way of an analysis of any gaps that were needed to be augmented in the information security program around security specifically. And third-party risk analysis, et cetera, and medical devices. And so as I took that opportunity to do that analysis and give my final presentation to these C-level executives, the colleagues of the CEO, the CIO who I was working for, they came on board and asked me to be their director of security. And I eventually became their CISO for 9 years and built the program from the ground up. So it was really a business orientation and risk orientation background that led me to my path to cyber. And I haven't looked back. I'm passionate about healthcare cybersecurity in general. And I encourage everyone to find the unique piece of their interest or their heart and follow it. It's going to make your career a lot easier and a lot more interesting.
And you know, it's fascinating. You said curiosity was what allowed for the CISO to recognize that you had an interest and that you may be a good fit for the career. So that's actually a wonderful thing to have that curiosity and ask those questions. It just gives you that visibility. Megan, if you could share, how did you end up in the cybersecurity space and sort of what keeps you interested?
Sure. So I actually didn't start out in this career. This is my second career. My first career was journalism, and I was writing about technology companies during the dot-com boom, sort of the end of the millennium. After 9/11, I thought I might want to work for the government because, it was sort of a different time and we all wanted to help, right? So I went to graduate school and ended up in a management consulting firm after that, where because of my technology writing experience, they put me on technology policy projects. So I was there for about 12 years and then switched to government. This is probably my 7th or so year as a federal employee. And it's not hard to stay interested because there's always something new coming down the pike in cybersecurity world, right? There's all cool innovations, and now it's ChatGPT, but what will it be in 6 months? And there's always something interesting and fun to get involved with.
It is. It sounds like it. Gina, how about you? What was your experience as you entered the cybersecurity space? What was the beginning of your career like, and what's maintained your interest in the career?
One of the things when I started this career per se, it wasn't the direct line to where I am today. It was a number of switches and moving to one opportunity to another. So I spent 8.5 years at IBM, 15 years at Microsoft, 8 years at AT&T, and now I've been at VMware for 5 years. I've always been, up until this current role, in the technology piece of it. I was an SC, field engineer, manager, and all those kind of roles. So, and the blessing was that every company that I went to was a bleeding edge company. So I didn't see the things after it's been on the market for a long time. I'm in there with the teams helping to figure out, what is this? How can we use it? And all of those have helped to build to where I am today. All of those different companies, all the different perspectives of how they did this. And every role that I have done, security has been part of it. So even today, we had our team meeting and we were talking about the whole AI, and we have a lot of interesting questions about, okay, so the information it provides to you, what is it real? You only get what you put into it, is only what you're gonna get out of it. So we had, so I say that to say, my career has been leading me directly to technology. Technology has led me to the bleeding edge, and bleeding edge right now is cybersecurity. It's everywhere, whether we want to call it that or not. And I'm just so excited to be in it. My family knows me that I'm the geek of the family, so I enjoy that.
And so that's so fascinating. And Luz, as you answer this question, not specific to cybersecurity, but it sounds like a lot of us have made a change in our career. So what traits would you say are important for an individual that's maybe transitioning to cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's a great question, Natalia. And first, let me just share a little bit about why I chose to be on the human resources track. I started off in operations, and I managed in call centers, and I did a lot of sales, operational work as well. When I transitioned into HR, it was because I wanted to leverage the skill sets that I started to develop and see success within, in a way that provides access. Access is so important to all of us. And so to your question, Natalia, to make that tie, what I would say about the dynamic in which we all experience success is to first identify what it is that we're looking to achieve, and then identify how you're going to achieve it in an organization, in an environment, in an industry that really lends itself to you. And cybersecurity is such a phenomenal industry to be a part of, in that it provides you a mission. You're part of something greater than self when you are securing people's information, people's assets, right? And your career will lend itself in an industry that allows for you to really see the opportunities and be challenged by the opportunity. And so the first thing in creating access is to recognize that you need to start unlocking that for yourself by understanding what it is that you want to do. In cybersecurity, in that industry, you can be an HR person in cybersecurity. You don't have to be in technology. You can be marketing, you can be finance. The question is, do you have clarity of what you want to achieve? And then do you have access points to start learning and really involving yourself in a way that helps you unleash your potential within the organization that you choose?
That's fabulous. That's absolutely fabulous. Go ahead. Okay. since we are having a conversation about gender parity, with that comes pay parity, but also in order to get that pay, you actually also have to know how to climb and know how to manage your career in any organization, whether it's cybersecurity or not. So Megan, or actually Sonia, let's go back to you. How did you navigate power structures early in your career versus later when you had more of that formal leadership role?
Oh, that's a big question. I would say that, I mean, I really made a point to sort of keep my eye on my point in the horizon. So a lot has evolved since my very early days in being an only female in an IT organization, much less a Hispanic female and young in an IT organization. So, I think that keeping your own, I call it a personal north in mind, and not letting the chatter sort of distract you. Think about your skills as a communicator. Think about your skills as a writer. And those are going to be the most valuable skills that any kind of leadership team needs. Somebody that can facilitate conversation, somebody that can negotiate when posed with different options or different business objectives. And I sort of hope that, in my career, my hallmark has been sort of a quiet influencer. And that is, you don't always have to, speaking in large meetings or speaking with executives. It's more important to formulate a cohesive, definitive thought and get your voice heard with an important message versus just trying to kind of assert yourself in presence by speaking a lot in general. So I know Megan's kind of smiling, so she's I probably hit at the heart of something maybe you've had experience with. But I have found that when I was a younger woman in corporate America, that was sort of the attribute that called out to me when I saw other women at the table that had a sort of je ne sais quoi. They had like a presence. They sort of established their space and really owned it. And I kind of, in my younger years, tried to formulate that same mix in my leadership style, and it's helped me so far.
Wonderful advice. Megan, would you like to add a little bit more nuggets to that? And then Gina?
Yeah, well, I was laughing because not to use a gross generalization, but isn't it usually men who talk just to talk in these meetings? And that's why I was laughing. But, early in my career, I was criticized for not speaking enough in meetings, which is such a, it doesn't mean anything. I would speak when I had something to say, but some people just spoke to speak. And then they would also speak to repeat what I had already said when I did speak. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. But it does evolve as you sort of grow up through your career. Initially, I was more of a workhorse, but you have to be careful that you don't get stuck in that role. And you have to make sure you grab for those leadership opportunities and that you align yourself with people who can sort of help bring you up. So find not only a mentor who can help you with your skills, but also a sponsor who has the ability to pluck you out and put you into, positions of greater importance and that sort of thing.
That's wonderful. And I actually agree with you that the workhorse analogy. I think women tend to be super focused on what they have in front of them, especially earlier in our career. We forget to manage those relationships upwards, right? We're awesome about mentorship. We're amazing about giving back. But when it comes to advocating for ourselves, or as my one of my bosses used to say, Natalia, you need to toot your horn a little bit more. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm doing my job. Isn't that what everyone else is doing? And no, that wasn't what everyone else was doing. And so, Gina, what else do you have to add to that?
I take everything that everybody else has said already. And then the pile on that I have are two areas. Number one, I had one great mentor that told me about commanding a room when you're in a room of men, which every time I went into a room, it was full of men. One of the things was, don't be the secretary. Don't be the one sitting there taking the notes. Be the one providing the information. That I didn't even realize, but that was something that I had embrace because I wanted to make sure I caught all the information. No, you need to be a part of that conversation. The other thing that I find that I think is, for me, I always sought after and still do the thing that nobody else has done yet. I don't want to be part of the pack and having to compete with people on the knowledge that they have there. So, for example, we're talking about repatronization of cloud and security and all like that. And it basically means bringing things from the cloud back on premise, something super simple, right? But nobody's done it yet. So that's one of the pet jobs that I'm doing. And now I have my teammates looking to me to be able to provide that information. So being an expert in something that nobody else is has been one of the things that helped me to navigate through this environment.
That's great. Luz, how about you? Do you have anything to add?
Look, I think everyone has added tremendous value to this really important question. I think the only additional perspective that I can add at this moment is to underscore the importance of what Megan and you, Natalia, mentioned relative to the voices in the room, how much you're speaking, and the fact that you need to advocate and have people around you. My perspective is when power struggles happen, it is because there is an absence of information. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you bring to the table. And therefore, you might be in my territory. I'm gonna show up a little bit more assertive because I want you to know who I am at the table, in the meeting, in the organization. And so to tie all the comments that were made, one practical thing that we should all be doing, and to echo the words that Natalia, you said, is really work on relationship building. If someone doesn't know who you are, let them know who you are. Ask them for a cup of coffee. Ask them, hey, can we chat after the meeting for a minute? You mentioned something in the meeting I really liked, and I want to vibe with that messaging, and they get to know you, right? So look, it's work. Things, my father used to always say, things no caen del cielo. Things don't fall from the sky onto your lap and all of a sudden you're successful, right? You have to go get it. And so for me, that's the one thing that I would add is remember that power struggles are happening because something is absent in terms of information and knowledge, and therefore someone is responding, someone is behaving a certain way, and that can easily be broken by just making a connection with someone.
The power of relationships. The power of relationships. I agree. And that's actually a great way to segue into the next question we have here, which is, what advice do you wish you had received earlier in your career? And that is anything from, tools, relationships, perspective. What advice do you wish you had received? Megan, you're smiling over there, kind of.
Yeah. So this is probably not what people are expecting to hear, but I worked a lot of hours early in my career, and you don't need to give up your personal life to do well at work. So the advice that I wish someone had told me when I was in my 20s, especially, is that your job does not love you back, right? So your job's not going to be there at the end of your life. You're not going to be there thinking, "Wow, I wish I would have worked more," right? So take work to live, and then try to have a lot of great adventures on the side. It'll make you better at your job anyway, because there is really a lot of diminishing returns when you're working 60 plus hours a week. You're not going to be doing your best work.
I agree. Luz?
I don't know why I have my father present with me today, but I can hear his words. He said to me growing up, right? So I was primarily I lived in Salem, New Hampshire, which was, I'm just going to call it what it is. It was all white. I was the only person of an underrepresented group, Latina, all the way through high school graduation. And my father would say to me, "You got to prove yourself. You got to prove yourself. You got to prove yourself." And so I, recorded that in my mind. And I thought that every single moment, no one was going to give me a chance unless I proved myself beyond. Then I go into the corporate world and I start working, and that kind of cultural string that wraps around our lives, which is, for me as a Puerto Rican, is to be humble. I was always also told to be very humble. And so I wish that that the advice I was given is work hard, yes, show your stuff, do your thing, yes. Show up with humility, but don't lead with being humble. And what I mean by that is I would always say, oh, no, it's no big deal. I'll do it. Oh, yeah, sure. No problem. And oh, sure, I'll do that. And I became what I think, Gina, you were talking about, the workhorse. I was known as the person that will just get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was counted on that for that. And Gina, to your point, which I thought was phenomenal that you brought it up, is once I got that label, even though I was demonstrating leadership capability, honest to God, I felt like it was only good enough to get to this point here, to the point of doing the work.
Yeah.
You lead this small team, Luz, but you're not going to lead the function or the organization because we need you here, right? And so I wish somebody had said, look, show up with humility, do your thing, but don't lead with that, because you need to be proud of what you do. You need to own your capability. You need to own the trajectory of your growth. And you can do that in a humble way, but you don't have to always put yourself in a situation where you're only seen that way. Mm-hmm. So that's my contribution to that piece.
That's great. Gina, are there any skills that you would say someone early in their career should be really looking to get a good grasp on?
Skills. One of the best things I've learned is a couple little things. One of them is learning to embrace no and not to take it personal. We go into meetings all the time, and you should come with a pocket full of ideas, something that you're going to contribute to the meeting. Strategically do it. Don't be the one who capitalizes on all of the conversation. But somebody's going to tell you no. What do you do with that? To me, and going back to even your previous question, that for me was a thing that I had to embrace. That no was the starting point. No means we're in a conversation, that you heard what I said and you may not agree. So now it's my opportunity to take it to the next level. Let me figure out, how do I get to yes? So understanding, where you're standing is going to be a tool that you need to do. You need to know your room, know your audience, and being able to navigate beyond no. And I think that's all. I mean, to me, because if you can get past no, that opens up. And I guess the last little piece would be, don't be afraid to take a step to someplace that you didn't know. If you don't know it, say yes. The guys do. Heck, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the line, you'll stay over the weekend and you'll learn how to do it. So yeah, can you build this building? How tall do you want it to be? I'll add a couple extra floors because I know somewhere along the line you need for growth. Did you know how to do it? Now you still have to have all the certifications, all like that behind you. It's not something you just can throw out, but always say yes. Sure, I can do it.
Always say yes. And by saying yes, Gina, what are some of the highlights in your career so far that you are super proud of? And honestly, how have you impacted the community through the great work that you've done?
I just think, first thing, and let me just say how humble I am, because how humble I hope I am, because it's not me. It's the things that my parents have instilled in me, that you need to do something for somebody else. You'll get yours. Don't worry about trying to get the accolades, because you're doing the right thing. So number one, always do the right thing. One of the things that I've been very, very proud on is, and you'll go through your career and you'll think that you're doing some things, but nobody's noticing. I won the Engineer of the Year award when I was working at AT&T, and I did not know that anybody was even seeing me. And then one of the things I had to do was get, you had to submit recommendation levels from people. And I had asked some strategic people, could they submit the letters that they wrote? Again, I didn't see myself being seen, but they were there, and they showed that what I was doing was helpful. the last thing to me, the most important thing at this point in my career is community. So I spend, the way I met Rainier and everybody was working with other organizations that will be able to put people behind me that look like me. There should be a 50 million women behind me doing this job. I'm not a brain surgeon. It's not that you can't do it. Why are we not here? So trying to build more people to follow in my legacy would be the biggest thing that would make me the most proud going forward. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It 100% makes sense, 100%. And I think more of us should be doing it. And I think that gap of leadership would be much smaller if more of us were doing it more frequently. Sonia, you've been a little quiet there, so let's get you going there. What is a highlight in your career that you're the most proud of, and something that has changed your path or promoted as you've been promoted? So highlights, essentially.
Highlights of my career. Personal reasons have led me to focus on healthcare, cybersecurity specifically. I had a sick child at one point. She had actually a terminal disease, and thank goodness she overcame it and is fine. And I myself had about a couple of years ago with cancer, and really was dependent on kind of healthcare givers, healthcare technologies to help me get better and get back to doing what I was doing. I think a couple of weeks after I'd gotten a cancer diagnosis, I was asked to contribute to a book. And of course I said, I think my plate's kind of full right now and I'm going to be a little bit busy. But they worked with me and actually got a scribe to help me sort of do a verbal sort of back and forth, question answer session, and then kind of formulated a chapter, and I did the review process and it was published. So that was a moment where I was, really on the cusp of saying, you know what, I'm maxed out, mother of two, dog, house, COVID, cancer, like done. But so I had some other female champions that encouraged me, and so that accomplishment in and of itself, being asked to contribute, to a book of 10 other risk management executive females was really, really important to me. But also just kind of the way it came about in my life. And I think the second highlight probably is being, reaching this level in my career where I've been a security officer for various companies now in this capacity for the last 15 years or so. So I think just achieving that level in my career was a really big milestone for me. I made a pointed decision to go back and get my graduate degree a couple of years ago, even in the face of having a child that's now going to be entering college. So I knew I had college costs ahead of me, but I really felt like it was something I needed to do for myself in my late 40s. And I'm really, really glad that I did it. It was actually a gift to myself in the best way. So those are some career milestones that kind of are hallmarks of my pathway here.
Both of which are very admirable. Megan, what highlights do you have that you'd like to share with the audience today?
I think I'll mention, after working as a management consultant for 14 years, you're always in behind the table. You're not at the table, right? Mm-hmm. You're like doing all of the work that goes into all this stuff, but then you're behind someone. So when I started working as a federal employee at the Department of Commerce, it was really kind of exciting. And there were times when I got to go represent the entire Department of Commerce at the White House. And I don't think I ever thought I would get to do that. Especially when I was, backbenching it for over a decade. I mean, that's just a really cool thing. And, I guess I would say you guys have to dream big, because it was a mentor who helped me get that job, and she thought I could do it. And when we sat down to talk about it, I was like, I don't even know what I do anymore. What do you want me to do? That's what I do. Whatever you want me to do. Right. But she sort of lifted me up. And I get to have this great experience. And then that job has led to the job I'm in now, which is exciting in its own way. So I think that's probably it.
That's wonderful. And we're going to come back to that momentarily. But Luz, what are some highlights that you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, I am listening to what the other panelists are talking about. And one thing that dawns on me is I should also be proud of this magical way that we have found to balance life, all the things in our life, right? And Sonia, you talked quite a bit about that, and a successful career. A successful career, though, that was created or developed by jumping through hurdles and working through it and figuring it out and finding mentors, right? And so I think for me, thank you for that moment for my own reflection to say, gosh, yeah, I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to get through life, and I've had a lot of ups and downs personally, and also managed to do something that I really love in the space of human potential. I think the greatest achievement, and I've had many things that I'm grateful for in my career, leading organizations from an HR and learning perspective, is the fact that I finally, after I don't think I'm exaggerating, 20 years of hearing people say, you should do this on your own. And me thinking, like, someday I'd like to own my own. I'd like to lead my own practice. I'd like to own my own business. I'm a Latina, women-owned minority business, certified by Massachusetts. I'm so proud of that. That was 7 months ago.
Yeah.
I said to my husband, that's it, I'm doing it. I don't know how we're going to get through it. And he said to me, look, this has been something you've talked about since I've known you. Just do it. We'll figure it out. And with the support of so many people, and I go back to the word access, right? People providing access so that we can all work our magic, do that for one another. That's my proudest moment. Is I launched Lead Humano, which in English is lead human, and humano means human. So for me, it's all about untapping that potential that we all have, so that businesses can achieve their missions and people can achieve their successes for themselves and their families.
That's so wonderful.
Great job.
Yes, worthy of an applause. And it's an opportunity for you to live out your values too. So that's huge. So Megan, back to you. You were talking about, and actually it correlates with what Luz shared. Sometimes we don't do things because we're afraid, right? Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think that fear is worthy of attention. And so with that, I know that there's some myths out there that people have about the cybersecurity space. And so let's knock down some of those myths just briefly. Megan, what would you say one myth that people have?
You need to know how to code. And I will say, you're going to have to fight that when you show up. And then people say, oh, you don't know how to code? I'm like, no, I don't know how to code, but I know how to write circles around you about what you're doing, right? And I can help you make things happen. I don't need to know how to code.
That's great. So you don't need to know how to code, and you can leverage other skill sets.
Exactly.
To boost your talent, your expertise. Gina, you're itching over there to shout something. What's a myth?
I think we talked about it before. The biggest myth is that there's nothing but cybersecurity. There's like 500 million areas that you can go into, and different levels. It's not just, I want to do cybersecurity, but what does that really mean? You have to ask yourself, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What's my passion? Like Luz is talking about the fact that she does HR and working with those groups, and then there's the finance part of it. And so there's so many pieces. There's no such thing as I want to do cybersecurity.
So it's broad. It's a broad field. It's much bigger than we know.
It's so much broader.
Okay, so that's awesome. Sonia, what would you say?
I would echo that, Gina, because I worked in sales, cybersecurity sales for 2 years for a large network company. And I actually led their sales in US and Canada, but the females and others that I'd met, were cybersecurity specific, writers, marketers, public relations, policy writers. I want to draw attention to the fact that relative to other operational areas in a business, right? Cybersecurity, information security hasn't been around as long as the CFO in the financial arena, right? Or human resources and HR executives. So we're still relatively new in navigating And you can see with federal legislation, with global legislation, as in terms of cyber policy, there's so much to be developed, and countries and public sector, private sector are all struggling with what's the right mix of enforcement and legislation versus enterprise level policy. And I think that's a real opportunity for people that have good writing skills, that have good negotiation skills, that can translate business processes into documentation and form a standard. I think those are all great skills that you don't have to code, but there is a level of business acumen that you probably need to understand how cybersecurity fits and why it's important to enterprises today.
Can I add one thing onto that also? The one thing you mentioned in here was the fact that globalization, what has changed this whole environment and brought about what we call now cybersecurity is the globalization of data, okay, and influence. And, I remember when I'm not going to say how old I am, but when I started out, my laptop right now has more power than the machines that were running and taking up a full room. There's so much everybody's access to everything globally. And that whole global environment has driven all of the things that cybersecurity is here to take care of. How do I protect myself from what's going on in the world? How do I know what's real and what's not real? How do I stop the bad actors? Those kind of things. And I think that that's all part of exactly what this whole cybersecurity is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to really, but I just thought, the point that Sonia brought up was very, very important.
No, it is. It is. And I know that in our conversation the other day, we mentioned that cybersecurity is not male. Well, it is male dominated, but it can be perceived as a barrier, right? And so we shouldn't allow ourselves as women to not be part of that conversation, to not be part of that industry, to not be part of that field, and to give ourselves the opportunity. If you think about it, cybersecurity, it's essentially risk management, right? And risk management, a lot of it is narration. And so the processes, the procedures, like we know checklists, that's our thing, that's our gig as women, we know checklists. And so we would be absolutely wonderfully suited for this field. And as we could see here today, right? We have 3 experts in the area, in the field. And so if anybody takes anything away from this conversation, don't let those myths get in the way of your success or the fear of trying, because the truth is, I cannot tell you how many times I've failed in my life, but I get back up and, we continue to fight. And so that's what we have to do. That's part of life. And actually, great way to transition to our next question. And that is, how do you push for systemic change around ideas that are new or not popular? And this is more organizational focus. So Luz, why don't you kick us off with that one, the response to that one?
It's such a great question, because I think we all experience that no matter what organization, industry that we're in. When I think about that question, Natalia, I think about what I observe, what I experience when it's happening. And I call it, and you've heard this term, groupthink, right? Groupthink is something that happens quite a bit in organizations. It's just kind of human nature to want to agree with one another, like one another, stick with one idea and keep building that idea. And if we're going to innovate and really have breakthroughs in cybersecurity, and no matter where we are, it's our responsibility to find ways to open up the conversation, right? And not just settle with the conversation. Find courage in asking questions. For me, the strategy to break groupthink is in first having the courage to raise your hand and say, hey, I am hearing the conversation. It seems like we're all in agreement. And let me play devil's advocate, or can I offer a different perspective for us to consider? Because it might help us level up the conversation. And so here's what I'm thinking, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So no one's going to take offense that you're breaking groupthink, because look, people know that it's happening. The same group of people come into a meeting, it's the same rhythm. This is typical, everybody's nodding their heads, right? Like, so let's just call it what it is. I think you can still have the opportunity to help people feel secure in what they do and what they say in their role, and also really encourage an open conversation that leads to even, or leveling up the conversation, leveling up the outcomes of that conversation. So, I tried to provide Natalia a scenario and a practical way of dealing with that scenario. And groupthink is, do not be afraid to ask the question, hey, can we think about it from this perspective? I'm just curious to see what people would think if we would look at it this way. There's other techniques and things that we can use. I'm sure the other panelists have tons of ideas around that. But one practical thing is just ask a very open and sincere question around curiosity for another viewpoint.
Great. And I think, Gina, do you have anything to add to that?
Great point. Great point. I think the biggest thing is, if even in groups, you're invited to that group for a reason. Make sure that you are a participant and not just someone who's listening here. You were brought in before your point of view, the things that other people see that you need to bring to the table, and express them. And just like you said, I don't have to step on everybody else to be able to get a question or my views across. A lot of times I just throw it back on them. So, just like you just said, so what does it look like to you? Yeah, this is what I see. Tell me and then make it a conversation, not an attack. Not to say, Liz, that was crap. Don't ever say that again. No, you sit down. It's like, well, I what I heard you say was this. Let's bring it out. And then, the diversity of thought is the best way to make the best team. If everybody's thinking this way, then you're not hearing anything else going on around you. Everybody's going, and you're piling on. The diversity is what makes things better, to me anyway.
It is. And that diversity includes different degrees, different personalities, different backgrounds. It's everything. Sonia, I know you have, from a community perspective, I know that you a big advocate of women and cybersecurity, but what did you do personally to be able to sort of stand out in your community at work?
So this kind of goes to the last question, and kind of some of Gina's comments. I always did my homework. So, go to a meeting informed. If you're trying to move the needle on a different strategy or position, be prepared to come with the metrics that prove that your direction is sound. And so this is Megan and I, like, management consulting backgrounds, right? They're all, anticipate the ask, right? And challenge yourself to get those data points ready. And in that way, you can have a solid conversation, but you also obviously look informed. When I was in sales and teaching salesmen how to sell into the C-suite, I would always say, do your homework. And they're like, Sonia, what does that mean? I was like, go to their website. Google is now available to all of us. It doesn't take long to Google the customer you're trying to get into. Look at their open recs, see what kind of resources they need, read their P&L statements or their public reports on their website, so you can get a feel for, what their challenge areas are. And then you go into the meeting laying out what and then say, how can you help? Then let's start the conversation from there. This is what I understand. You've gotten these certifications, you achieve 5 million in revenue. Looks like you have some network engineering, challenges because you have 7 recs open. And then it's like, oh, okay, they did their homework. They're respecting my time. Let me do the same in kind. And it definitely changed the conversation, but it also changes the way that they look at you. It's a mutual respect, starting those business discussions. So that was probably the way that I navigated a lot of my different, positions, depending on what I was doing for the organization.
We have a few questions actually from the audience. One of them actually is, what if your supervisor tells you not to ask questions during meetings? Since we're in the topic of meetings, I think it's adequate.
That's a good one.
Gina,
Go ahead, Gina.
Gina's teaching over there too, Luz. Let's go with you, Gina, and then Luz, if you want to add a little bit.
The first thing is to ask them why. You know, I mean, you know, and and not why, meaning I'm checking his authority, but what is your thinking about if you're inviting me to this meeting and I'm supposed to be bringing value to the meeting? What would be the best way to, in other words, put it back on them? What can I do to make sure that you know that I'm part of this meeting? Second thing is look for another job, because he is obviously trying to be a blocker. And look for another role, you know. And sometimes one last thing I have to say is really sometimes personally God has put little barriers in to make me make a turn. And that turn may not have been a bad turn. It was, you know, okay, you've hit enough here. Let's start moving you on. So that's
wonderful. And then another question, how do you find a mentor? I'm sure we don't do this alone, right? We do this together. Someone supports us. Sometimes we develop, right? That's how we do it sometimes in the absence of a mentor. But how do you find a mentor?
Gotta ask, right? So I've mentored, I've lost count, but it's over 15 people through my career. And sometimes mentorships are very transactional, but sometimes they can go on for years and years. But if you work with somebody who you think that you think they seem kind and they're up the chain from you, but maybe they have a skill that you really admire, just ask. People have asked me, you know, will you be my mentor? I've never said no. I mean, if they say no, you didn't want them as your mentor anyway. But, and you know, just keep trying.
Yeah, so that's actually how I found my mentors. I've asked, and sometimes someone takes notice of you though, and offers, and that's happened to me as well.
Can I make 2 quick comments? To add to that is be intentional about who you're asking to be your mentor. What's your game plan? Begin with the end in mind. What do you want to get out of that relationship? And then match up what you want to get out of that experience with the person that has the experience to help you bridge that between. That is so critical. I can't tell you how many times I've coached people that are like, well, my mentor wasn't really helpful. And then I uncover the fact that it became just 2 people having coffee and building a relationship and not with a goal in mind. I don't want to lose the opportunity, Natalia, if I may. I just want to build on Gina's really good, and I was kind of giggling with her when she's like, quit your job. I like to look at things from different angles. So to the question of my manager doesn't allow us to ask questions during the meeting, seek to understand perhaps that meeting is designed to be information based only, and that's the purpose. And also ask the real thought-provoking question back to the manager. Hey, Manager John or Stacy, I know that you don't want us to ask questions during that meeting because you're giving us a lot of information. What's the right platform in which I can and my colleagues, my peers can ask those questions? Where would you like us to do that? Because we have a lot of them.
Yes, perfect.
That's excellent advice, Luz.
Go ahead, Sonia.
No, I was just saying that's excellent advice, Luz. When Gina mentioned that did happen to me in my career once, and I actually learned more. There was an objective that was trying to be met during the meeting, and it was better to get insight after from my boss, and actually that helped our relationship. So yes, always go for the origin. Don't assume that you're being blocked out. You are in, you have to be a big girl. You're in corporate America. There are objectives that are trying to be met. So you have to keep that in mind.
And what's important too, when you, back to Luz's point, when you bring it out in the open with the group, it creates culture and an environment of trust and development, which is critical and sometimes missing in some organizations. So if you have a boss that is open to those questions and just kind of being authentic, that's a good boss. Or a good leader. I like to distinguish between boss and leader, manager. Manager, that's for the org. A good leader really cares about the org and you as an individual. We only have a few more minutes. There's one question here that says, thank you, role models, for the wealth of information and the encouragement You all transitioned from other roles in cybersecurity. How did you prepare yourselves for the transition into cybersecurity? Did you take any certifications or training? And I know that Sonia went back to school to earn a master's degree. Megan,
Yeah.
back to school.
Before that, though, I went and got my CISM. So that was like maybe just a week or two investment with a subsequent certification after. And I mean, it was a pivotal inflection point in my career, that one certification. So certifications are important. You know, if you love Cisco products, go, you know, gangbusters and go get your Cisco certification. Or you love networking, you know, Fortinet, Palo Alto, all these people offer so much education, and programs like CyberWarrior are working with some of those technology partners to help kind of meld that together. But yes, I think hands down, certification means that your resume is going to hit somebody's desk, and that's already a non-starter. They know you have fundamental skills. Now you got to up level the conversation on what your experience is, which is where everybody wants to get to in an interview. What is your experience and what can you contribute?
Yeah, certifications open doors.
And actually, that's what CyberWarrior is in the business of. We prepare individuals to be able to get those certifications that they need to advance into entry-level work, which is a great way to do it. Gina, did you want to say something else?
No, I think whatever everybody was talking about here is right on point.
Right on point. You know? I agree. And folks, if you could raise your hand for a few things. The attendees would like to know if you are available on LinkedIn and if they could reach out to you after the meeting. So if they could connect with you, raise your hand. Yes, thumbs up. All right, we love it. And then the other thing that I'd personally like to ask, CyberWarrior is obviously in the business of educating individuals. And a lot of what we do really has to do with the confidence of the people. Learning, I've actually attended a few of our classes, and what I was able to get from them was we have excellent trainers, but if you're a person that's diverse or not, you walk into a room where you just feel absolutely welcomed. And that is an experience that you don't always get in all programs that you sign up for. And so that's a quick plug for CyberWarrior from someone that appreciates what we're doing, the mission that we're trying to drive. And with that, I want to thank you, ladies, for participating today. The nuggets you shared, the experiences you shared, I think people will kind of shut their Zoom off today and say, wow, what a wonderful group of women. And thank you so much. I know all of you are very busy. I know, Luz, you're running your business. Gina, Megan, Sonia, you're running your own P&Ls over there. And so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Before everybody leaves, though, I do want to remind us all that CyberWarrior does want to make an impact, and we want to make a difference. That 20K women in 5 years, that is a huge undertaking. And so we need you guys, all of you, both on the call as well as our panelists, to be a part of that. And also for those of you on the call that are interested in a career in cybersecurity, look at CyberWarrior. There's lots to offer there from the bootcamp perspective, the individuals, the people that you're able to engage with because of CyberWarrior. It's an absolutely fabulous program. Networking is key in life, and we facilitate a lot of that. And also, don't forget, if you're a woman, please, please, please apply for one of those scholarships that we're offering. Make a difference in your life. Sometimes we're a little bored in our careers, so this is a great opportunity to check something out and make some change for yourself. Take the initiative. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and have an amazing weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all.